Hi, my guest today is Jessica Cambio. Do you prefer Jessica Rose Cambio? Do you prefer your middle name? No,
The same,
Jessica
yeah.
Cambio. Hi. Jessica and I have known each other for years, and she was one of my graduate students in my class at Manus. And I've always been a huge admirer of her, both as a singer and as a person, because she's so interesting and full of curiosity about everything. So the topic I wanted to talk about today is can singers self-manage and what are the pros and cons? Jessica has a highly enviable career right now, a Fest in Erfurt, is that right, in Germany?
Yes.
And sing full lyric soprano, and full lyric soprano. And throughout her career, there have been times when she's self-managed and times she's had professional management. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what has been the pluses and minuses of each situation?
Okay, so trying to think of what I said last time, but I don't remember. So you can just improvise a spontaneous answer. So I think for during various points in my career, I was managed and then not managed and then managed and then not managed. And I didn't notice a huge difference in the beginning. I think that in theory, and it's right, that managers give you more access to theaters, especially on an international level. I haven't been in the US in a while, so don't remember really how it works, but which is weird that I say that, but I don't remember how anything works because of COVID. So I think that the idea is that the manager gives the singer more access to theaters, easier access, which in some cases that's true. And in some cases it's not, because I think that singers can also be more, I don't want to say aggressive, but more independent and can access those theaters all the same, with or without a manager. Now, whether the theater answers you or not is the question that depends on them. But I think that it's possible. In my case in particular, I reached out to theaters who I knew had already heard me in juries of competitions or in other places. Like I did the NIAPs a few times and that worked really well for me. That's why I have a FES contract. So when I saw in the past, I mean, there are a couple of singers who keep really good records of where they sang, who they sang for, how old they were, what repertoire they offered, what they chose, all those things. I've been not so super organized with that because I've been singing for such a long time that I used to do that and then I kind of stopped doing it. But I think it's important to do because it happened to me once where I was in Operalia, for example, and there was a judge, Joan Matabosch, from the Liceo in Barcelona. And I asked him what his opinion of my audition was. And he took out his laptop and he opened up and he's like, "What's your name?" And he put my name in there. And he pulled out a chart of me that he had followed me all of these years. So he said, "I remember hearing you for the first time in 2003. You sang blah, blah, blah. And then I heard you again in 2007, and you sang this, this, this. And now I hear you again in Operalia and I wrote this." And so I was like astonished. But it's important to keep that rapport with the theaters. And sometimes you need a manager to do that. And sometimes you can do it yourself. So in the case of Johan Matabosch or even Peter Katona in Covent Garden, same deal. I know that they have heard me before. So I just in the past have reached out to them and I said, they answer me. If they don't answer me, great. But most of the time,
it's easier to reopen the door than to open the door.
Yeah, I think so. So, but that's not always the case because oh my God, I'm having trouble speaking English today. I'm sorry. The situation with Frankfurt was totally random. Like he didn't know me. And I reached out to his secretary and I happened to be in Germany and I said, "Listen, is it possible for me to come? I'm willing to get on the train and come." And they said, "Actually, yeah, we have an opening tomorrow." And I went to Frankfurt on the train. I was the only person singing that day. The stage was a mess because they were in the middle of doing a show. It was like half a set, and I sang, and he offered me Manon Let's Go from the stage, and that was without a manager. And I was like, okay, so this can happen. I don't know if I just had luck that day.
Well, also you've got a good resume. Or is that, did the resume have something to do with it, do you think?
You know what? I mean, maybe, but I don't think so, because I think Frankfurt is known for liking American singers, which is great. So I kind of knew that, and I had that on my side. But I'm not sure that he had ever heard me before. Maybe he did, maybe not. I think I just happened to have a good audition that day. I got lucky, I sang well, and he liked my voice in the theater. I was already on the stage, so he knew what I would sound like. And I hadn't sung Manon Let's Go yet. And he said, do you think you'll be ready to sing this in 2 years? And before he even finished his sentence, I said, yes. So, but that I think was like the unicorn, I don't think that happens all the time. And, but it did happen to me also with Airfoot, actually. I was doing a NIAP audition in New York. And again, without a manager, because NIAPs are, you don't need a manager to do a NIAP audition. You can with your manager, but it's not necessary. And Guy Montafon was in the audience or the jury. And from the stage, he said, so what are you doing? Why are you here? What's your story? And I said, well, I'm Italian. I lived in Italy for a while. I came back to the US because I had things to do. I was finishing school and, other things.
Your family.
Yeah, I have family, of course. And but I also had work in the US. So I tried the US for a little bit with City Opera and New Orleans Opera and Sarasota. I did a bunch of things all at once. And so then I said, but honestly, I really would like to be back in Europe. I feel very happy in Europe. I have a European passport. So I was thinking of going to Vienna, or I was thinking to going to Munich. And he was like, what about Erfurt? So I said, why not Erfurt? So I said, okay, maybe Erfurt. I don't know. And so I thought he was joking. But then when I went home a couple hours later, Diana Soviero, I didn't know this, but Diana Soviero, who was my teacher, is very good friends. She and Bernard are very good friends with Herr Montafon. And so she said to me, did you do a NIAP audition today? And I said, yeah, how did you know? I didn't tell you. So she said, Montafon is staying in our apartment. And he came home raving about this girl, this American girl. He didn't even remember your name. He just said, Diana, she sounds like you. And he said that he offered you something. And I was like, he did, but I thought it was a joke. So she said, no, he wants to offer you something, email him immediately. So I said, okay, I will. So that was another thing that I got without management and totally like by fluke. And
so obviously I don't mean obviously, but I would think that one of the advantages here is that you have less commission to pay.
Yes, no, yain. Because in the case of my case, for example, like I got the FES contract before I had management. So I thought that it was fair to not pay commission on my FES contract. And I worked out a deal with my manager. And so that's something else. But I am managed now by someone.
You're in European management or international?
Yeah, I have two. One is in Vienna and one is in Dusseldorf.
But nobody in America?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay.
So I, like Frankfurt, for example, I got by myself, but I wanted him to seal the deal and I wanted him to negotiate the fee, because that's the other thing is like the good thing about having a manager is that the artists shouldn't really have to negotiate their own fees. I mean, we can, it's possible, but I think the theater takes you more seriously when you have management. That's not for everyone. That's not the case always. But I also think that there's a job. I mean, I think my opinion about this might have changed over the past 2 years or so, because I think for a while I thought I can do this without a manager. This is totally fine. But then I can see now on the other side how the theaters view the artists, and the artists are there to do one job. And the job is not to be your own manager. You can do it, but to negotiate your own fee is tricky. And so I think that it's better in that case to have somebody do it for you.
Especially if they do it well.
Yeah, exactly.
If they don't just roll over and take anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you have to have a good rapport with your manager. And I think it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. I think you need to try and fail. and find the right person, the right fit, and run into things. You know what I mean? Like you need to find a common ground, especially when you're speaking multiple languages, and then things get lost in translation, and then Corona happens, and so like there's all this stuff that happens in the
Mhm.
in the interim. But sometimes a manager can weed through the stuff so that you can just do your job. That's the good part about it. But it's not necessarily that everybody has to have a manager in order to get their foot in the door. I think once you do get your foot in the door, it's probably better, it's easier for you to have somebody manage the things that you have. But until you have things to manage, it's possible to do it on your own.
How about your American gigs? You said the City Opera and New Orleans, I guess.
Yeah, those I was with a management in New York during
Uh-huh.
those times. And so City Opera was because of my management, and so
They got
was.
you the audition and then followed up.
Yeah, they got me the audition. I sang the audition, and then mostly I followed up, because that's the other thing, is that if it's not a good fit, then you tend to have somebody who you have to nag. And that is really also not my job. I
Mhm.
don't want to have to nag somebody, because then I think I can do this myself.
Right.
Why do I have to call you and tell
Mhm.
you to do your job? So I think it's difficult. I think times are changing now, especially after COVID. So I'm hoping that once this all ends and once we come out of this, that managers will have more respect for singers, and that theaters will have more respect for singers. I'm not sure that that's the case.
Uh-huh. So
But
something you implied, but you didn't actually say, is that you have to have a really good um, uh, line of communication with your manager. So when you said you have two now, did you actually sort of sit down with them and sort of come to some agreement about various issues, or did you just assume everything was going to be fine, or what?
I think in the case of these particular managers, it's been different with different managers over the past. So in in the case of these two managers that I have now, it sort of went like this. The one I have in Vienna is someone who has known me actually forever, because I won a competition in Lake Como in 2009 called Asligo. I'm sure you know about this competition.
No, I don't, but I know Lake
No?
Como.
It's Lake Como's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's the Associazione Concertistica e Lirica. I think that's it.
Okay.
Aslico. They call it Aslico.
Okay.
And it's a competition that they've been doing for, I think this is the 72nd year, or maybe
Wow.
60, it's either 62 or 672. It's been around a long time. Tebaldi won it, Freni won it, Scotto won it. All the big Italian singers won this competition.
So is it only open to Italians or Italian
I,
Americans?
I think it's only,
Okay.
oh no, maybe it's international,
Uh-huh.
but for European citizens, I think.
Okay.
Although again, everything changes. I'm
But
not
you
sure.
were you a European citizen at that point?
Yeah, I had
Okay.
my Italian passport. So I did this competition and I won. And instead of just handing you a cash prize, they give you a prize, but you also get a role debut. So that was my first time singing La Boheme. And this manager, his name is Walter Fladarski. He's in Vienna. He's been around forever. I
Yeah,
think his
I know the name.
mother was the agent before him. He took over or something,
Mhm.
or maybe his father. But it's been in the family for like 400 years or something. Um, so he was in the jury of Asligo in 2009, and he was interested in me in 2009. But then things happened. I got distracted here. I went there, and then I was with Inarte in Milan, and then I was with somebody in New York, and then I was with Gabriele Monici, who actually passed away. And so it was sort of a multitude of things, multitude of reasons for us not to cross paths. But I think it was 11 years later, I came to Germany to do an audition tour. And Brian Johannian, who's a friend of mine, he's not my manager, but he's a friend. And he said to me, if you're going to Europe, why don't you contact Vladarski? Because I think, he's been around forever and he might want to hear you. And I think you're his taste. And so I wrote to him and I said, I don't know if you remember me, but I sang for you like a million years ago. And I'm coming to do a Wiener Staatsoper audition, which I arranged myself.
So you remembered that you had sung for him.
Yes.
So do you keep track of these things? Do you have files, or do you just have a good memory?
I just have a good memory.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I have a file. I mean, I have some files on my emails, but I
Uh-huh.
just had a good memory. So I set up this Vienna Staatsoper audition by myself, by the way. And I wrote to him and I said, I'm coming to Vienna. I'm singing at the Staatsoper. Would you like to come and hear me? Because it would be interesting for me, for you to hear me after all these years. And I would love to get some feedback from you. So he did. He came to my audition and he was like, I think it's great. You sound exactly the same, and that's in a good way. 11 years later, like, your voice is not ruined, and like a lot of singers 11 years ago. And so he said, yeah, I would really love to manage you. I think I think you have the goods, and if you're coming to Europe, even better, and if you learn German, even better. So then we started working together, but I had already had this connection with him from many, many years ago. And so it's weird because we don't even talk on the phone. We don't meet. We don't we just, when there's something, he emails me, I email him back, we get it done, we sign the contract or whatever, but it's mostly done through emails.
So your expectations, he fulfills your expectations of what a manager should be and what the manager should do.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you've had some who have not.
Yes. I've had several who have not.
So when that happens, do you actually sit down with them and say, these are my expectations, are they unreasonable, or what do you think about them?
Yeah, I think that happened in Milan with Luca Targetti, who actually was one of the first victims of COVID. I think
remember.
he died like a year and a half ago now. We sat down in Milan when he was managing me, and I said to him, I don't know what you need from me, but tell me, because I'm very good at just doing it. Like, all I need are facts and I'll just do it. And he said, well, I think you need to create a list of repertoire that you want to sing, that you can sing, that you shouldn't sing. And you should know very well who you are, because that's the most important thing. Because most singers go into auditions and they are like, I can do absolutely anything, just hire me. And I think that you need to have that attitude, but you also need to know who you are, what you're good at, what makes you shine, and what you're not good at. And try to avoid the things you're not good at.
Of course.
If you can.
Because you're building a brand.
Right. It's not always possible, because sometimes you have to say yes to things that you don't want to do. But I think it's very important to know that you said yes to this thing, even though you don't want to do it, because of this and this and this.
X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. And that's happened to me before, where I've said yes to things where I'm like, I'm so desperate to pay my rent, I have to take this job. And I don't want to, because I hate this maestro, or I hate this tenor, or it's in a language that I don't want to sing, or it's not my fach, or whatever the reason.
And did you come to regret it, having accepted it? Or did you just sort of say, okay, these are my reasons, and I'll deal with it?
A little bit of both. Mostly I regretted it a little bit, because I felt like I had to sacrifice who I was to do a job that didn't bring me satisfaction. And I think that that's also really important not to do, because this career is so difficult. It's so difficult. And there are very fleeting moments of satisfaction, and sometimes you have to just suck it up and do the job, and that's fine. But if you can also really not sacrifice who you are to do it, then I think that that's really important too.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what Matthew Epstein said. There are 3 reasons for taking a job. Do you remember this? One is money, one is personal growth, and the other was something like glory. I can't remember exactly what it is. And he said, if you only have one out of those 3, you're going to really regret it and hate it. However, if you've got 2 out of the 3, then you're okay, and it'll work for you.
Yes. And I agree with that, because I think that if you can get 2 out of the 3, then you're doing pretty well. Because 3 out of 3 is kind of hard.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very rare.
It's very rare. There are a couple of singers who have this star over their heads that follow them around the world, and they have 3 out of 3 every single time. But that doesn't happen for the majority of people. So
by glory, I don't mean glory. I mean that it's sort of career advancement.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so if you've got 2 out of the 3, then it might be worth it for you. But if you've got none of the 3, then certainly not. 1 out of the 3 you might do, but you'll regret doing, it seems.
Yeah.
So I think the important thing, as you said, is to know your reasons and then analyze that. And if you've got a good manager or someone with a good line of communication, you can actually talk it through with them.
Yeah, because I think, the older you get, the older I get anyway, the better I know myself, and I know certain situations, like I can see ahead of time, this situation is not going to be good for me for this reason, XYZ. But I think if you have a line of, you need your team, of course, right? So you have this line of communication to speak with your teacher, your coach, your manager, your mother, your husband, whoever. You have like maybe 5 people that you trust, your analyst, your therapist. I mean, depends on who you're talking to, but there are like 3 people, 4 people, I would say, that I really like always consult with, or if I don't know what to do, they're the ones that I call and sort of say like, well, what would you do in this situation? You know
Sometimes you
me.
have no doubts, I assume, and you just say, this is right.
Yeah. And then I just do it. And then I don't really check in anymore. I didn't do that when I was young. I was very sort of like insecure, and I thought, oh, I need to check with my teacher. I need to make sure that I have permission, but now I give myself permission. But I
Because
think
the
that
bottom
comes
line,
from,
it's your career, it's not theirs.
yeah, yeah. And at the end of the day, I mean, now because I'm teaching, at the end of the day, I'm not going to be there to hold your hand. You need to know the things that we've been talking about, the things that I also have gathered over the years from my teachers need to serve me on the stage, and they need to serve my craft. And I can't think about, oh, what is my teacher going to say about this note? It's too late if I'm thinking about
Right.
that,
But
So
like, how about accepting a certain role that might be borderline about whether it's appropriate or not?
I think there's always a multitude of questions that you have to ask yourself in that situation. Like, there was an example that was recently offered to me, and I thought it was actually a mezzo role. And I think that it wasn't offered to me to help me grow my career. It was to help fill a hole. That's the sensation that I got. And so I thought, this really isn't going to serve me. I mean, yes, I can do it. I can get by. But am I going to be proud of the work that I put in? Am I going to really shine? I'm not a mezzo. So no, the answer to that is no in my own mind.
Let me, can I, if you don't mind, I can't remember did I ever tell you this story about Leontine Price and Schulte?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe.
Okay, so forgive me but I think it might be useful for people. She
Yeah.
said that after she did her huge Salzburg success of Trovatore, I can't remember, 1961, something like that, 62, I've forgotten. Anyway, near the end of the run, she got a telephone call from Schulte saying, Leontine Price, this is Georg Schulte. I thought you did a wonderful job as Leonora. And she didn't even know, never met him. And she said, well, thank you so much. And he said, I want you to come back to Salzburg. I think it was next season or maybe the season thereafter. And I want you to be my Leonora in Fidelio. And Leontine, without thinking, said, absolutely not. She said, and he said, wait, you need to think about this. He said, because I think you'll be wonderful in the role. And she said, no, it's not right for me. Just boom. And he said, if you say no, we will never work together forever. Wow. He said, and right, exactly. And so she said, well, if I do say yes, I will never sing again. And she said, so the answer is definitely no.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, I don't know how many, a couple of decades, he called her for something else, maybe it might have been a Trovatore, I don't even know, and said, would you come and do this with me? And it was something appropriate. And she said, yes. So the first day of rehearsal, she took him aside and she said, do you remember our conversation, however many years ago, about Fidelio? And he said, yes. And she said, why? What are your thoughts about this in the rearview mirror? And he said, I needed somebody, you were available, and I think you would have sounded good through the run. And she said, but it would have really hurt my voice. And he said, well, of course I knew that. He said, but I needed somebody and you would have done a good job. And yeah, so there you go. So there was nobody out there to protect her, and she had to do it herself. She had to know enough. And so it sounds like that's what you're saying too.
Yeah, and it's difficult, but I think that's the point, is that you have to know yourself so well that sometimes you can get away with doing things like that are not necessarily in your fach or not necessarily your cup of tea. And then you make exceptions and you do it and it's fine. I'm actually doing a role right now that is very short, but it's very high, and it's more difficult for me to sing than Manon Lescaut, actually. But but I'm doing it because it's not going to kill me. It's not going to create waves, and it's what I should do.
It won't damage you in any way.
Right.
I
But
think
this
if
other
it is
thing,
going to damage you, you've got to really think very, very carefully.
yeah, because you only get one voice, you only get these two little vocal cords, and if you ruin them, that's it. It's not
Yeah,
like, you know.
the bloom gets off the rose very, very easily, and that can never be regained.
Right,
I
exactly.
mean, we can
And
both think of any number of singers who started out great and were singing things that were inappropriate, and it was basically shot within a few years.
yeah, because you need to know how to drive. If somebody gives you the keys to a Ferrari, you need to know how to drive before you can get behind the wheel of a Ferrari. Because
Right.
if you don't, you're going to crash it, and that's it. You don't get another Ferrari.
Right, exactly.
So you get one.
Right.
So I think I really learned this. I mean, I kind of always learned this from my teachers. I think that they were always even a little bit too picky because, you know, back in the day you could say no to things. And then now in the situation that we live in, it's very, 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 very difficult to say no to things. But I think that this was something that she harped on all the time. And she told me constantly that she said no, no, no to Karajan when he asked her to do Butterfly all the time. She said, I am going to end my career in the way that I don't want to end my career if I sing Butterfly on the stage. It's too emotional for me. It's too much for me. I can't do it. I'll do a recording where I can stop and rest and come back and drink, sip, but I won't do it on stage. I'm sorry. And
And
she
she said the
refused.
same thing to me about Suor Angelica.
Yeah, I think she did it once on stage or
Did she?
something, but
Okay.
it was too emotionally taxing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think you need to know those things about yourself. Like
Mhm.
Diana, for example, loves to live in those moments.
She's the greatest at that.
Yeah, she's fantastic at it. So then you're like, okay, well, that's what serves Diana and that's what serves Mirella Freni. They're totally different human beings. And so I think it's important to know those things.
Whereas
about
Diana
yourself.
didn't enjoy doing things like Micaela.
Yeah, yeah, which I can understand.
Whereas that was one of Freni's greatest roles for
Yeah,
decades.
she loved it.
Uh-huh,
She loved
uh-huh.
it. She said Micaela for me showed everything that I could possibly do, everything about the voice. It showed me off in every way possible, and I wanted to do as many Micaelas that I possibly could, as a young person especially, before going into any other roles, because I got my feet wet. I got all my singing done. I got the most applause and worked the least. So
Well, there
she's
you
like,
go. Okay. Yeah, and good feeds. Okay. So going back to the idea of agents, do you feel that they can act as legitimizers for you as you approach having a career?
I think that if you find the right one who understands you and who has the chutzpah to do it, then yes. The problem is that you can't force anyone to do something that they don't want to do, because trust me, I tried. And it's it's something that you need to really work together on, because it's going to be if it's not like that, it's going to be a tug of war. And you don't want to be in a tug of war with your manager, because they're the ones who have the keys to tell you about auditions. And if they want to be maybe nasty, or if they think that you're going to be difficult in the conversation, they won't even bring it up. Or there's just a multitude of reasons why I think it's good to be on the right page. If you do go with management, then you should find somebody who suits you well, and knows you well, and knows that you won't sacrifice yourself to do things
So
just for a paycheck.
if you get an offer from a manager, say, do you actually go out and have a coffee with them or a glass of wine and just talk about
Yeah.
these things?
Yeah, why not? I
Okay.
think that most of them are open now, especially.
Mhm.
I've seen a couple of them on some Zoom meetings and chats and things, and I think that some of them are a little bit closed-minded, but most of them are very open to hear what you have to say. So, I mean, it's difficult for sopranos, of course, because sopranos are like just so many. So it's hard to get the attention, but if you get the attention of someone, then I think absolutely just, it's like dating. I think you
Yeah,
sort of have to
exactly.
like have that little like flicker. If it's not there, then don't waste your time. But if
Uh-huh.
it is there, then you need to feed that.
So if you feel that you're on the same page
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
you, and it's all about you, it seems.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're the product. I think
Right.
people forget that. A lot of people have forgotten that. The opera theaters who don't list the singers' names, by the way, have forgotten that operas can't be done without the singers.
Mhm.
So it's something that makes me and my colleagues very angry, because I think that they just take us for granted sometimes. And then when you come along somebody who's really, really talented, and you like take care of them, and so then the rest of us go, oh, so it is possible for people to consider talent and make the artist important and not just use them for what they're worth. But
Right.
again, it's like all about relationships, I think.
Got it. So when you were self-managing for those years, you said you did not sort of keep notes and files, but would you recommend that other people do, that they like have a spreadsheet
Yes.
for
I think
basically for everybody they sing for? And
yeah, I think it's a good idea, because it's very easy to forget.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I mean, on both ends, because there are also times where I got like PFO letters from companies that I never applied to.
What's
So
PFO?
it's like, I'm not going to say what it stands for, but
Uh-huh.
they're rejection letters.
Oh, I see.
Basically
Okay, got it. Uh-huh.
They call them PFO.
Okay.
So there was a company once in America who sent me a letter saying, thank you very much for your audition, but we're not taking blah, blah, blah. And we regret to inform you that you have not been accepted. And I was like, I never applied and I never auditioned, but thank you anyway. And I wrote to them and I said that. I was like, you know, you really need to get your organization or your computer files together, because I never sang for you and I never applied to sing for you. And now I never will, because I know maybe I'll never work there, but but I think that it's important to be organized and to keep a list of things, to know who you've sung for, because then once a couple of years goes by, you have to sing for them again. It's like you never really existed. You're a number on their spreadsheet.
Right. Quite a few times I've hired people who sang, and I didn't like their musical choices at all. I thought it was really sometimes in really bad taste, but they did it with so much conviction, and they cared so much and so much emotion. I thought, well, it's very easy for me to say, to make different choices with them. But as long as they can keep that level of conviction and musicality, then I'm with it.
Yeah, because that's really all that matters at the end of the day. Because what you wear on stage in an audition isn't what you're going to wear as that character. They're going to give you a costume anyway. So who cares, you know? I mean, yes, you have to make a good impression and you can't look like a schlump when you go into your audition. But also Luca Taggetti a couple of years ago said to me, he said to me, I know you're American, but I have to tell you, I really appreciate that you're not a Coca-Cola singer. And I said, what's a Coca-Cola singer? And he goes, you know, these Americans, they come in, they're like wearing ball gowns or Russians or whoever, it doesn't matter the nationality. But the singers who come in with ball gowns and glitz and to distract from the fact that they actually have talent. And so he said, this is the problem, because even if they are talented, we have to see through all that ruffle to get to the, you know,
well, that's
like
a good point.
It's just too much. It's too much. So I think that I usually tell my students, be a blank canvas. You don't need to wear something that is so showing. Like if you want to walk the runway. But I think for an audition, it's not essential that you distract them from why you're there.
Right.
And I think sometimes the outfit can distract people from the reason that they're there. That shouldn't be an excuse. And it is an excuse that judges get distracted. So I think
I'd also say avoid something that's too overtly sexual. I think, because again, that's not what you're selling. Hopefully.
Well, I mean, unless that is what you're selling. Like if you're auditioning for Suor Angelica, no, like, you know what I mean? Like there's a time and a place for everything. So like, if I'm going to go into an audition and audition for Carmen, maybe I'll be a little sexier than if I were auditioning for Suor Angelica. So also, you need to be smart about it. Right?
Oh, that's funny. I remember I was judging the Met auditions a couple of years ago, and this one woman came in with these shoes that they were pink shoes and had these butterflies that sort of stuck out and shook every time she walked.
Nice.
And I remember the other judges were passing notes to each other saying, get a load of those shoes. she sang really, really well,
Yeah,
in spite of
but
those shoes. So I remember
but
when
that's
we,
what you remember. You see,
well,
that's the
see,
problem.
all these years later, but I remember when we convened to talk about this, the singers, we said, well, let's start with the one with the shoes. So we all knew who this person was. And of course, we promoted her, but she sang really well. I don't know if it certainly wasn't because of the shoes, but in spite of the
Yeah.
shoes. And we
Yeah.
remembered that one thing.
Yeah, so maybe the key here is, this is good that you said this, because instead of wearing like all the glitz, wear one thing that makes you really memorable, like those shoes, you know,
Right.
but then sing your ass off, because that's the really, that's why you're
That's the
there.
bottom line. Exactly. Exactly. I totally agree. So, so you think that you could get quite far self-managing, but at a certain point, you think it's better to let a manager come in and do the dirty work?
Yeah, I think it's different in every case. Like I have a student in mind that I'm thinking of, and she's got an amazing voice. It's big, big voice. But she hasn't done anything. So she asked me about management recently, and I said, well, I understand the reason why you would think you'd need a manager, but a manager's point of view is, I have nothing to manage.
Right.
You haven't done anything. So if you go to sing for a manager, that's all they see, is that you haven't done anything. You could be you could be the next Maria Callas, but it's not really, because the shape of the business has changed. It's not really like the manager takes you and creates your career and guides you like he did with Renato Scotto 50 years ago, or with Diana, or with so many other singers. They don't really work that way anymore.
Right. They don't develop the
Now,
careers.
yeah, it's on us to develop our own careers, and then get lucky to find a manager who is on the same page, and then a theater who happens to like you and hires you back, because that's what's really important, is to get hired back. It's not really to get hired, it's to get hired back. So I think that unless you really have like 2 or 3 important things, a manager also is going to say, there's nothing here for me to manage,
Right.
unfortunately, even though I think you're wonderful, you know? So I think, I don't know, it's a kind of a catch-22. It's a difficult situation, but this is why the business needs to change. There's a lot of things that need to change about the business, because it's not on the singer to create these experiences.
But it sounds like you, early on in your career, you entered lots and lots of competitions. Some you won, some you didn't win, but many of them, even the things you didn't win, often led to other things, at least having doors that'll open for you.
Yes. Yeah, that was the path that I chose. Some singers choose to do young artist program after young artist program, or summer program after summer program, or voice teacher after voice teacher, because they think that they're going to get in the door that way. I happened to do competition after competition because I thought that was the right path for me. And I think I did over 100 or something. It was
Wow.
crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, it was insane. And I think I won maybe 50%, but not always first prize. And I was a finalist like 97% of the time.
Well, that's good. That's really great. So
Well, it's
therefore,
great until you never win.
well, you
Because,
don't, it doesn't pay for yourself, but at least
right,
then people are eager to hear you again, or at least willing to hear you again, if not
right,
eager.
right. Because then you can say years later, I was a finalist in blah, blah, blah. Do you remember? And they always say, of course, because they have
Right. They're
they have a
not
track.
going to, I guess you could conceivably lie and say, I was a finalist for your competition. They're not going to look it
Yeah, I
up,
never
probably.
tried that. I should try that.
That's so funny. Well, I think I need to let you go. It's dinner time for you, and this has been incredibly helpful. And I thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, no problem. I hope that I answered your questions. And I don't know,
Totally.
I sort of went off on a lot of
No,
tangents.
but I love that about you, and because you always come back, and it's always interesting and illuminating. So thank you so much.